My goodness, the perils of living in an apartment where it's always 20 degrees hotter inside than it is outside. I was just streaming for 2.5 hours and I am all kinds of toasty right now. And in addition to that, I had to turn off the AC so that you could hear me on the microphone. Hello and welcome to Six String Gaming. Today, I want to talk about some microphone stuff. There's a surprise, right? Microphones are obviously super important to your streaming or content creation, just in general. You want a microphone. As far as streaming goes, most people recommend a webcam as the one essential thing you sort of kind of have to have if you want to make it somewhere with streaming. However, microphones, I would say, are a close second beyond that, because with video, even with like a really low quality, crappy, webcam, people can stomach looking at bad footage, or rather the brain can sort of deal with having to process it as long as your audio is on point. If you come into a stream and someone's talking like this and your audio is peaking and cracking, it sounds terrible, right? Nobody likes that, nobody wants that, and the brain is incapable of dealing with that in the same way that it is with just a terrible visual. And with that said, a lot of people that I've seen streaming are using the Shure SM7B. Fantastic microphone, really wonderful proximity effect. You get close up on the mic, it sounds very boomy, your voice becomes full rounded. It's a high quality broadcast mic. I've used it throughout my entire radio career in addition to several electro voice microphones like the RE20, I think the 27 as well. I've always been a Shure guy. The point being, this is a $400 microphone, and a lot of people I think get it just because it has that cool factor and they've seen their favorite streamers using it, but they might not necessarily know how to either A, get the most out of it, or B, realize that you can pay a quarter of the cost of that microphone and still end up with a product that's maybe only half as good. And professionally speaking, yes, there are many differences in these microphones that make the price tag justified within reason depending on your needs. For the everyday person just starting out on Twitch or not knowing how to get started, or someone with just a general interest in audio and learning about microphones and things like that, for $100 you got some solid options. In this video, I am going to be strictly comparing the two Shure microphones that have been most commonly used in my line of work throughout my life, the renowned SM7B and the equally renowned Shure SM58. Both of these microphones are incredible. Both of these microphones are legendary. They're both incredibly versatile, pretty rugged. The 58 here, these things are known for being tanks. Bash them, smash them, throw them on the ground, do whatever you want with them. They're tough. The 7B, I wouldn't go throwing this one around quite as much. It's definitely got a premium, secure looking and feeling case, but not that this isn't expensive, but these things were made to have the crap kicked out of them, so it's all good. Going back to my point of everyone seemingly having a 7B or wanting one, I wanted to look into whether or not you needed one. And that's sort of a recurring thing on this channel, is that I'm a major gearhead. I have crazy gas, which is known as gear acquisition syndrome. I'm addicted to shopping, man. I like buying stuff, I like playing with it, I like reviewing it, and basically I just want to share that information with you so you can make an informed purchase, or if you already know about this stuff, you can just geek out about it. Do you need a Shure SM7B? They are amazing with the right voice, but for many people, the 58's gonna do the trick, and it's gonna do a pretty good job at it. So let's jump over into the rig here. I'm gonna plug these microphones in. I'm gonna let you know sort of what's best about each one and where they work best in which scenarios. We'll do a little head-to-head with the sound comparison of each microphone, and I'm also gonna be tweaking them to see if we can make the SM58 and the SM7B sort of sound like each other. I'm gonna try not to sweat out. Okay, so here we are in a quick little session I've opened for Adobe Audition. What you're hearing right now is the SM7B as I usually have it set up for my streaming situations. It's running through a DBX286A processor with plenty of compression and EQ. I have a noise gate on it. This is one of those purchases that I describe as something you don't necessarily need, but you will probably end up wanting it. I look at my audio from a radio standpoint because that's what I do for work. And we use a lot of hardware-based processing there, so that's why I'm using this DBX system versus plugging things in through Audition or using filters in OBS. That is definitely something we'll be covering in a future video, though. For now, I've queued up some sound recordings of the SM58 and the SM7B, both with and without processing, which you'll hear first. This is the Shure SM7B going directly into the audio interface. This is the SM58 going directly into the audio interface. So you can hear right off the bat, not a crazy big difference. The SM58 actually had more natural output than the 7B. That's why I have the volume turned down here a little bit. Let's listen to them one more time and hear what kind of characteristics we can make out. This is the Shure SM7B going directly into the audio interface. This is the SM58 going directly into the audio interface. To my ears, the SM7B actually sounds a little bit weaker than the 58. I hear a lot more low and high frequencies in the 58 that to me sound a little bit more pleasing. Now let's see what happens if we run both of these microphones through the DBX and give them a little bit of processing. This is the SM7B with a moderate amount of processing. This is the SM58 with a moderate amount of processing. So there, what I notice is that it sounds like the SM7B has a lot more richness brought out to it, a lot more details that you're hearing. Those low and high frequencies have gone from sort of flat and neutral to now they kind of just pop. There's a much greater clarity to what you're hearing. Where the SM58 still sort of sounds like what it did before, there's just more of it. Let's give it another listen. This is the SM7B with a moderate amount of processing. This is the SM58 with a moderate amount of processing. Just like without the processing, they still sound incredibly similar. And this is important to note as well. What type of headphones you're wearing is going to affect how you hear these played back as well. You may hear more or less of a difference depending on what you're using right now. For this next section here, what I did was attempt to EQ both of these microphones within Audition to sound like each other. So for the SM7B, all I did was come over to the effects dropdown, filter and EQ, parametric equalizer, and all I did was accentuate the low and high frequencies just a bit, because originally the SM7B sounded a little flatter. So by applying this EQ, we're putting a greater emphasis on the frequencies I first heard on the 58. Let's take a listen to that. This is the SM7B without processing, but with an EQ to sound like the SM58. We can go back to our original recording here of the SM58 to compare. This is the SM58 going directly into the audio interface. So right there you can hear there's not a lot of differences still going on. There's different textures and depth to the sound that you can definitely hear, but overall, considering the price gap between these two, they sound remarkably similar. Now for the SM58, I did the same thing by applying an EQ that instead of being accentuated in the lows and the highs, I made it much flatter. The SM7B is known for having a very flat default sound profile, which is why it works on a wide range of voices, but that's also why it works best for a particular type of voice. Loud, deep, rumbling voices that can take advantage of the proximity effect of the microphone will experience a much more noticeable difference than someone with a higher pitched or perhaps less full voice. Let's listen to how the SM58 sounds with an EQ applied to make it sound more like the SM7B. This is the SM58 without processing, but with an EQ to sound like the SM7B. And we can go back to our original recording of the SM7B for reference. This is the Shure SM7B going directly into the audio interface. Again, just like I showed you with the second examples here with the processing enabled, just adding a little bit of an EQ onto something can definitely help accentuate the frequencies you want or de-emphasize the ones that you don't want. You can bring a flatter microphone like the SM7B to life, or you can accentuate the details that the SM58 is already bringing to the table. Let's hear those one more time. This is the SM7B without processing, but with an EQ to sound like the SM58. This is the SM58 without processing, but with an EQ to sound like the SM7B. Overall, they're definitely two very distinct types of sounds, but you can admit that the differences might not all be that clear to the average set of ears. Especially considering the price of the SM58 versus the price of the SM7B, it makes sense that you'd want to ask yourself if it's worth spending an extra $300 just to get the SM7B. So overall, two really awesome, wonderful, and legendary microphones that are totally worth having in your arsenal. One, both, either, but you'd be really well off with at least one of them. These are two microphones that can both do a wide number of things and excel at them. They'll last you a lifetime if you treat them well. I think it basically boils down to what's your budget, how much can you afford, and whether or not you think the SM7B is a good fit for your voice. I find it works perfect for me, but I've heard a lot of other people say that it doesn't suit them quite as well compared to some other microphones. I find the SM58 to be more of a better well-rounder. It costs less, but for what you're getting, it's a really solid investment. Let me know in the comments down below which microphone you ended up getting, which one you have, which one you want to get. And if you like what you're seeing with 6-String Gaming, make sure you subscribe. Hit me up on Instagram and Twitter, 6-String Gaming on Insta, 6string92 with the little blue bird. I'm on Twitch. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be there. Join me. We have some fun. A lot of RPGs, tech talk, tutorials. I try and have some fun with it. Really hope you learned something today. Thank you so much for stopping by. It means a lot that you're watching this, and I'll catch you on the next one.